This is the GENY Goosepuck. Now this is a really cool product because it gives you the capability of having a trailer, specifically a gooseneck or fifth wheel, positioned 5 inches further back from where it might normally be, which means the ball right here is normally right there, and it positions this further back using this super hefty piece of steel plate that's welded to this mount in this big wing. And this wing right here is structural, but it's not designed to be the type of structure you're thinking. All the structural aspect from a weight perspective is really resting in this area right here whenever you're hitched up. The big wing back here is designed to keep the assembly from rotating because it would spin around this center gooseball mount if you didn't have this wing in place. Now, I've done a lot of videos on this. I've done some videos where I've been a little critical of it, and I've done some videos where we've actually shown some issues perhaps, and some videos demonstrating how well it works. I personally love this product. I really love what it does. Just like a lot of folks who watch my channel, especially the more technical folks, I know people are gonna say, well, you're creating a cantilever effect because this piece right here is essentially acting as an arm and a lever to your actual hole that it mounts into. So again, once we pull this out, you'll see that your traditional drop-in gooseball connection is right there. And this levers off of the back 5 inches, which means you have a lot of this action going on, or a lot of stress against that center ball mount, which can be important to think about. That said, we're going to take this one out and we're going to show you a competing product from the folks over at CURT today. Hang tight, I'll be right back. First of all, I'm going to tell you that once this is in, it is not easy to get out. And the main reason why is I think part of it's the weight, but also whenever it's all in place, it kind of feels as if it's kind of compressed into place. I could not even get the thing to budge. But once you take these bolts off right here, which connect this main piece to this wing, you can actually get some movement on it and you can possibly lift it out. But I definitely recommend taking some lubricant and putting it inside of this gooseball mount. That way, if you ever have to remove it, it makes that process a lot easier. But we should be able to pull it out now. Let's see here. There we go. And again, this part is very heavy. It's currently got my fingers pinched in there, which kind of hurts a little bit. Let me turn the camera off. Okay, so we have both products laid out on the table. Two different takes on how to kind of accomplish the same thing. Now they're a little different. This has a 5-inch offset, so this one pushes the ball back 5 inches. The CURT pushes it back 4 inches, and you can see this specific setup has their rocker ball technology, which basically has a big rubber bushing under here, and it allows this to pivot and rock slightly to dampen some of the vibration or load, which is interesting because it's kind of a takeaway from the GENY playbook, right? What GENY is really known for with their torsion flex system. Now, let's talk about these a little bit. First of all, CURT offers two flavors of this, one with this shock drop technology and one without it, one with the traditional ball. The difference in terms of dimension is that this is going to sit up much higher than the one without it. It's going to be much closer to this if you get this without that shock drop technology, which means the ball will sit lower. You may not have to worry about the front of your RV or trailer sitting up higher in the air whenever coupled up, because this will definitely sit a little higher. And it looks like it probably sits in about the range of about 4 inches higher up. So just keep that in mind. It will sit up higher if you use the rocker ball version with the shock drop tech. If you go with the standard one, it will sit lower because it doesn't need this big old articulating arm up top. That said, very cool product overall. I like some of the execution that they've done here. One big difference between the two is where and how it installs. Now what I mean by that is you can tell that they both drop into your factory gooseball connection. However, where that wing is placed to be able to prevent it from rotating, I think is a little better executed on CURT versus GENY, and this is why. So this big wing back here, which is designed to keep it from rotating on your Ford truck and on Ram or any of the other trucks, connects to the back two puck mounts on your OEM installed gooseneck fifth wheel prep package. So you can see where I have it cut out for the wing, which means that that lever arm sticking off the front right here is all cantilevered pressure. It's basically a lever. It's pushing like this with no support underneath it. What the folks over at CURT did, which is different, is This wing, or whatever you want to call it, is actually mounted to the two front puck connections right here, which means it's going to saddle the weight a little bit differently. You have that 4-inch lever coming off the front, but these will also help carry some of that load versus just that. At least that's how it looks from a construction perspective. It looks as if that's how the setup is designed. It's still going to do the same function in terms of preventing it from rotating inside of that center gooseball connection, but again, executed on a little bit differently. Now, another perk of CURT is that you only have to buy one system for any brand of truck that this is compatible with. And what I mean by that is a lot of people know that Ram trucks require a much larger footprint for the fifth wheel connection to sit in place. And typically with something like this, you would have to get a different skew because this wing would have to be designed to fit that much larger footprint that Ram trucks have. This is likely the same, but this piece would be different, which means you have to be very careful on which one you order so you know that it fits your specific truck. With the CURT system, you don't have to because they provide both this piece right here, which connects to the ball, and this piece right here, which is adjustable in width to fit either your Ford, GM, or Ram trucks, which is really nice, which means this right here is going to be for Ford and GM trucks. This is going to be for Ram trucks, and then you simply adjust the distance apart according to the type of truck you're going to be installing it in as well. So I got to give it to CURT. They were really thoughtful in terms of making sure one product fit any of the vehicles. That said, though, I don't really take anything away from Gen Y in that regard because as long as you order the right one for your truck, you're in good shape as well. From a construction perspective, they're both incredibly well built. They absolutely are. This is brand new on the market, so it's hard to say if there's ever going to be issues with it, if there's going to be a problem. Again, very, very well built. Very, very well built. Gen Y did notice an issue at one point with extremely heavy loads. It was not a catastrophic potential, but it was more of an issue where if you did develop a crack right here, they would replace it, and under the very rare circumstances where that occurred, the newer version of this no longer just has the single weld up here, it's also welded on the bottom. But again, not really the risk of a major catastrophic failure according to them. Right here, on the other hand, you know, if something starts to fail, if some type of a crack forms, anything like that, I will absolutely let you know. If anybody has this product and they've had a problem with it, please let me know. I am more than willing to share the good things about products as well as the bad things, and I think most people know that. So, that said, we're going to get this one assembled. We're going to throw it inside of the truck and see how it looks. Okay, so that's locked in, and you can see how it can rotate like this. So that's why both the Gen Y and the CURT product have this big brace to prevent it from rotating like this. The Gen Y goes back here, and the CURT goes up here. So let's go ahead and get that part up here and assembled. Okay, so the next part I install will be this piece right here, and it's kind of tapered in a way that slides into a groove right there. So it's going to slide into that groove right there. It's very well thought out. I'm going to take off a bolt or a nut and a washer. Go ahead and feed it through. Put it in the other side. Yeah, the ball definitely sits up much, much higher. Again, about 4 inches higher than the Gen Y, and it's also an inch closer to the factory Gooseball connection point versus the Gen Y. So now these pieces right here are going to attach right here, and they're going to drop into your puck connections right there. So we want to take these pins out. And then you're going to rotate them open so you can fit them in. And slide this one, fit it in. And they are locked in place. That is really cool. So this is kind of an interesting part. So these bolts in the picture here show that we're going to go in from the bottom up, but when you look at the picture here, it looks like they've gone in from the top down. To put them in from the top down would be very, very difficult, but I already tried to start running these up from the bottom, and this portion right here isn't catching the square piece enough to actually allow me to tighten them down the way I need to. It's actually spinning in there. So we're going to try this again, and let's see what happens. It's a little hard to do it with the bed rug here. Looks like it's working a little better this time. And before we tighten that one anymore, let's go ahead and feed this one through. Get the washer on. Yeah, this one's kind of spinning in there. Let's see if I can get enough to... Yeah, that one's giving me a problem. I hope I'm going to be able to tighten it because it just wants to spin. This one's tightening down fine, but this one, it's supposed to seat into this kind of rectangular section on the other side to prevent it from rotating. That's not what's happening. I might try to see if I have another bolt because it's not working. Okay, so you just got to really press on the back. Get it way seated in there. And once we have that much pressure on it, it should let us tighten it down the way we need. I think that's going to work. Okay, so it also tells me there should be a little pressure here or resistance, and I'm not feeling much. So I'm going to pull this pin out to tighten this down. See if I can tighten it down one more notch. I don't know if I'll be able to. There we go. Yeah, that's a little better. I feel a little bit more resistance in there. I'll get a wrench on that in a second. There we go. This pin locks right there. And then I think we'll probably have to do the same on this side. No, that one actually, you feel a little bit more, well, not much. Let's see here. Okay, I think we're good. Now we should be able to tighten everything down to 35 pounds. Okay, let's get these things torqued down to 35 pound-feet. Okay, so we have everything torqued down to 35 pound-feet as instructed. We have the ends in and pinned in place right here. And we have the pin locked right here. Now, I kind of like the way GENY does their locking mechanism a little better. It's a little bit more peace of mind because you know if it's flat and it's not lifted up above the little notch, it's locked in place. This one, if you don't have this pin in, there's a hole right here, and that means that it's unlocked if you can see the hole like this. When you flip it over, it's locked, but you still need to put this pin in to secure it in place. So it's an extra step, but I think most people who use this setup probably would be unlikely to remove it. I think most people would just keep it in here, but it's always worth looking at to make sure that everything is set up properly. Now, from a build quality perspective, from a finalized product aspect, it's built really well. I like the fact that it's one product for all three major manufacturers. That is really nice. I like the fact that I didn't have to cut a big hole in my bed mat in order to make it fit. That's also really nice. I like the build quality. Probably my favorite thing about this isn't necessarily what you might think. It's not really this rotating ball technology. It's more the fact that they give me chain loops. So the chain loops are integrated into this assembly versus me having to use the B&W ones right there dropped into the puck assembly. So it's all part of one assembly, which is really nice, and I can really appreciate that. The Gen Y still required me to use my B&W chain mounts in the other puck locations. So now this actually gives me 2 more puck locations back there, one of which I would use for my breakaway cable for the brakes, which is also really nice. Now, the assembly itself actually weighs significantly more than the Gen Y assembly, mainly because this hitch head right here is stupid heavy. It's very, very heavy. If I had the standard ball without this rocker ball technology or shock drop technology, then it would sit lower, and this would probably be closer in terms to weight of the Gen Y because, again, it doesn't have this huge assembly right here sticking up. I like the fact that the Gen Y is lower, so the ball is only about this high. This ball sits up, again, like 4 inches higher. It's significantly higher up to accommodate that rocker technology, but in CURT's favor, they also have a version that does not have that if you want it to sit a little lower. The entire assembly right here actually sits up higher in general, which is kind of a negative because it makes it a little bit more difficult to load the back of your truck and get everything back here without having to make contact with this or having to work around this. And these edges right here might do a number on things you may be loading in the back. So you want to be careful that you're not going to damage, scrape, mar something that you might be loading in the back that has to slide over these edges. And because the Gen Y is so low profile, again, it's very easy to load things in the bed of your truck and not have to take into account this big old speed bump that's going to be blocking its path. Now, from the mechanics of it, I like how the system locks into the puck system. That's really nice. I also like the fact that this lever arm, which comes off of the ball, is actually partially supported by your actual puck system as well. So it's not all the weight being transferred solely to that center gooseneck connection. This is all really thick steel. It's all 1/4 inch thick steel. And I can imagine that there are certain scenarios where the dynamic load, that moving load, would absolutely rest some of the weight on this forward section right here. Because technically you have a 1/4 inch piece of steel attached to a 1/4 inch piece of steel, which means this is a 1/2 inch thick piece of steel when everything is said and done. And it's bolted to a 1/4 inch piece of steel that is welded all the way around right here. And it's not welded on the inside. But again, I can imagine this will carry some of that weight. But the hitch head assembly is so robust that I really don't ever anticipate this thing failing. I can't really see a failure point up here. So that is really nice as well. This is a cool setup. Any of these, I'm sure, are going to cause some concern for folks when it comes to weight distribution. The fact that your pin weight is now being shifted behind this actual hole. With this, you're creating a cantilever effect back here, and you're applying kind of a torsional load like this against that gooseball connection. Now, this is rated really, really high. It's like, what, 30,000 pound tow capacity, which is pretty dang insane, which means this is likely going to have in the area of probably 5,000 or 6,000 pounds worth of pin weight capacity. I don't know for sure. Definitely check out the website. Check out etrailer.com. They're the ones that actually provided this to me for review and evaluation if you want to look at all the exact specs of it. But I like how it sits in the bed of the truck. I like how the Gen Y takes up less room. I like how it has the chain loops on here. But again, the low profile nature of the Gen Y is a really, really good feature. But I think the overall design of this, in my opinion, actually is in favor of the CURT because how it kind of carries the load in a more cradled type scenario versus it all coming off of the front of the actual ball. Now, some people might actually say part of the load would be carried on the back here with the Gen Y, because as it pulls up, it's going to put pressure there. But they don't actually lock in. They just kind of drop in, and there's movement there. So I don't necessarily think that that is what it's designed for. I think the vast majority of the load with both of these is designed to be carried by the actual Gooseball connection right there, and not by the wings right here, which are really designed to keep it from rotating, and in the case of the CURT, to also give you an anchoring point for your chains. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys something real quick, and this could be a concern for a lot of folks, because if your ball is so high up in the bed of your truck that there's no way to level out your trailer, or you don't have the space to adjust your coupler, that could be an issue. So the Gen Y sits significantly lower, and let's just say from the bed, which sits about a half an inch below this inch thick piece of steel, to the top of the ball. Let me take this off just so it can be a little bit more accurate. We're talking about, if we're willing to give an inch, let's say 6 inches, but more like 5.5 inches to the top of the ball. So the CURT system, because of all of this stuff, wow, so 5.5 inches versus 8.5 inches. So we are 3 inches higher. 3 inches higher up in the air than the Gen Y, and that could be significant. 3 inches is enough to absolutely throw off the angle of your trailer, and you may not have the adjustability to actually go to something like this. If you get the non-rocker ball version, it looks like it sits maybe 1.5 inches lower. So let's just say 1.5 inches higher than the Gen Y. So that may be a big enough reason in itself to consider the Gen Y, because it's going to sit significantly lower in the bed of your truck, which might actually help. In some cases, having the ball much higher actually helps you, especially if you have a coupler or a connection to your trailer that requires a taller height to get you the over rail clearance that you need. So this certainly should be able to get you there, but just keep in mind that this is something you have to consider. Where does the ball sit, and is this going to sit so high that it's going to make the front of your trailer sit higher than it should, thus possibly throwing off the balance of your trailer and possibly the weight going to your axles. Anyways, guys, I would love to know what your thoughts are. This is a pretty dang cool product. I gotta admit, I think CURT definitely saw what was already out there, and they tried to make something that was a little bit more universal in terms of purchasing to fit more vehicles, while at the same time making something that changed the dynamic of it a little bit, especially with this really interesting shock drop technology. Whether you choose the feature or you don't, they have both options. This is also really cool. But please leave a comment below. I would love to know what your thoughts are on this product. It definitely sits up so much higher, I'm gonna have to be very careful in terms of if that's gonna cause my trailers to be nose high. But we'll definitely evaluate that whenever we get this thing out towing one of the trailers. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, check out the description of this video if you want a link to this, to eTrailer, my channel sponsor who provided it. And again, if you haven't had a chance, please subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.